Thanks everyone for joining. This is a pretty large group. I'm thoroughly impressed and glad to see everybody. So, as Laura said, my name is Andy Schmeeken. For those that haven't met me, I see public sector is pretty well represented as people on this call, so that's pretty exciting. Um, I'm here to kind of talk about the just getting started with Flow Orchestrator. I've been giving this presentation. It's really kind of like a 45 to 60-minute presentation. I've given it to a bunch of user groups. So since we only have about 20 minutes, we're going to fly through a lot here, and I'm going to skip over a lot. But hopefully you'll kind of get an idea of how to get started using Orchestrator. So I've been known to say Flow is my hammer and everything is a nail. I love Flow. I think it's a really important tool that we have, and I think Orchestrator really changes this and moves it Salesforce really up as a game changer for a lot of different things. So let's get started. So we all know Flow. We're the Flow enthusiasts here. So I always just talk about the idea that, Flow, despite its ability to do things like loops and subflows, is actually a pretty linear process. You kind of have a starting point. You pretty much always have an end point. Of course, you might have some decisions that take you to different endpoints, but ultimately everything that has to happen in a flow kind of has to happen in a simple time period with one actor. But what happens when you need multiple flows to work together? And that's where Flow Orchestrator comes in and why it's so important. Flow Orchestrator allows us to work with multiple flows over any length of time, from minutes, seconds, days, weeks, years, whatever is important for your complex business process. So this is kind of what an orchestration looks like. Except that Orchestrator uses the auto layout template in Flow. And for some reason, this example from the product management team is horizontal, but we all know the auto layout is vertical. So really wish we could do it this way as well. Flow orchestrations are created just in the Flow builder that we all kind of know and hopefully love today. And it adds some new pieces or terminologies that we need to be familiar with to understand how to work with an orchestration or create an orchestration. The first is that we have stages. So your complex process is going to go through a whole bunch of stages, and every stage has some criteria, mostly what entry and exit criteria, what must be true to get into the stage and what must be true to get out of the stage so that we can go to the next stage. Any orchestration can be only in one stage at a time. It can't be in two stages during that time. Every stage is composed then of steps, and steps and step flows. And step flows can be either something that is auto-launched or a screen flow. Now, there's nothing actually special or unique about the steps themselves. They are actually just flows that we are all used to making today. They just get combined into this stage, and they get some extra parameters around them. So as extra parameters, steps also have entry and exit criteria. What must be true to be in the step and what must be true to be out of the step. And it has an assignment. Who is responsible for doing the work? So an auto-launched step, of course, doesn't have an assignment. It's something happening behind the scenes. And but screen flows that would have a worker does get an assignment. It also has another parameter, which is when it's a screen flow, is where does that the work that has to be done, get displayed. And so you define what record using record ID does the work to be done get displayed on. So speaking of the work to be done, this is the user experience. There's a lightning component that you put on your page layout. And it's composed of two different pieces. One is really the history and context of what's going on with the orchestration. And the other then is that work to be done. That's that screen flow displayed in this lightning component. So let's get to the demo. And for the demo piece of it, I've come up with this fairly simplistic, probably not the most ideal new hire onboarding process. So you would probably come up with something much more complex, and you could probably poke a lot of holes in this, but it's built for demo purposes. So when we create a new hire record, we are going to enter an orchestration that's going to automatically kick us into an orchestration. This first stage is the personal information stage, where the employee has to fill out some information, their preferred first name and birth date. And then the HR manager gets a notification that it goes into the next step where they have to approve that information. And if HR approves, we're going to move forward into the next stage for the employee to select their IT equipment. So they get a notification, they can fill out the form to the flow to fill out, select their laptop and phone selection. And then we're going to do what's called a parallel process, where two actors are going to receive the same work at the same time. So when I said before, every orchestration can only be in one stage at a time, that is true, but you can actually be in multiple steps at any given time. So in this case, to do a parallel process, we have this orchestration is in two steps at the exact same time. Now, to get data from one step to the next and from one stage to the step, is we're just using the input and output variables that are in each of these individual step flows to pass that information along. And those variables then become available to you throughout the entire orchestration. So I'll show you that in just a moment. So let's take a look at Salesforce. And this is my new hire record. I've only got a few fields on this record and on this object. We have a contact name, a preferred first name, and an active orchestration checkbox. And the reason I created this active orchestration checkbox is that right now, there's not any way to do component visibility with the new Lightning component. So I'm using a checkbox to determine whether or not we're in an active orchestration and going to show the component to people. So let's go ahead and add that to the Lightning page here. We'll just edit our page. And we can find our orchestration work guide and drag it onto our page layout. And now I want to set that component visibility. And I'm going to use that active orchestration field and have it set when it's true to only show the work component. So as long as there's not, as long as there's an active orchestration, you'll see it. And now if it's the record is not in an active orchestration, it will be hidden from everybody. So that's one of my tips. I've got some tips to share with you at the end, but that's one of the ways that you can control whether or not the work guide is showing. Otherwise, the work guide shows all the time on the record page. I was told by the product manager that eventually they're going to look into a way to actually have a checkbox as part of the work guide setup to show and hide it, so you don't have to try to do these workarounds for visibility. So once we do that and save that, this should show, well, it shouldn't actually be on my page because I'm not in an active orchestration right now. Now to get started building your own orchestration, you switch to setup and go to flows. And to do that, you just go to new flow. And I just have to show you that it's here because it's kind of hidden. It's in this all plus templates. And I don't know about you all, but I rarely ever remember to check this area. And way down here is this Orchestrator beta. So that's how you can start and create your first orchestration. When I'm back here at setup, one of my tips for you as well is to pay attention to how you're naming your flows. So I'm using a list view here to combine and keep track of my orchestration and all of the steps that go into it. And you can see that I've created a bit of a naming convention to follow for these steps, because if you have a really complex orchestration, all of these flows are available to you in the orchestration, and it gets a little confusing if you don't have some kind of naming convention that makes sense. So in this case, like when I call it step 1.1, to me, in my mind, that's stage 1, step 1. Step 1.2 is stage 1, step 2. Step 2.1 is stage 2.1. So it's going to be really important, I think, as you start to build orchestrations that you figure out a naming convention that works for you. Now, I've already got my orchestration open. and started to build it out. And the first thing that I did was I created a stage called pre-work. And this is a background step that is actually going to go and check that active orchestration checkbox. And that's all it's doing is I'm passing in an input variable to check it as true and the record ID that kicks off this flow. So that's gonna make that work component become visible on the page. And then we get into our first stage here. So like every good cooking show, I've got most of this built out because we don't have a lot of time today. But we get into our stage, first stage, and they have to fill out their personal information. And you can see here that we have the condition about when we get into it. This stage starts when the step starts. We've got what flow it makes up this step, and then any input variables. And this is just, in this case, it's the record ID that's kicking this off. And then we have to display where is the work component going to show. So we're also, again, putting it on the record ID, who it gets assigned to. Now, I've hard-coded my name in here for the demo. You can use any variable that's determined in any flow as to who it gets assigned to. Today, in beta, Orchestrator requires a one-to-one assignment, meaning that every step has to be assigned to a person instead of many persons. I think when it goes GA that they're expecting it to be assignable to like a queue or to a group as well. So, and then we have an exit condition, so that what must be true to get out of this step and move into the next step. So if you remember, we fill out our personal info, HR must approve it, and then we can have a decision element that determines whether or not HR approves it or not. If not, I could send it back to the employee. That's this loop back here. It comes back up to the stage. Or if they've approved it, we're going to go into the second stage where the employee has to select their IT equipment. So I'm going to actually build the parallel process for us now real quick. So all we have to do is add a step. Let's scroll this down here. We're going to add a step, and it asks us, do we want to do something in the background or something that a user has to do, an interactive step? And these are screen flows, so they're interactive. And we just give it a name like any other element that we put into flow. So I'm just going to call it 2.2 HR approves. So in this case, what's the entry condition? Well, it's not when the stage starts, it's when another step is marked completed, right? So the step that we want to mark complete is the 2.1 step. And now we have to select what screen flow runs this. So you can see all of the flows that I have available, all the screen flows, I should say, in my org are visible here. So it's, again, here's why naming is really important, because now it makes it a lot easier for me to figure out what I want. I need step 2.2 for HR. And now I can set in my input variables. And again, with that naming convention, we have some new global resources that become available to us with Orchestrator. You can see that we have stages now, so that are accessible to us. And each of these stages have things like a status, or I also have steps that are available to me. And steps have statuses as well as outputs. So in this case, I want to know what was the output from selecting the IT equipment. So you can see I could select my status, which would tell me whether or not the step was complete or not, but I want the output. And so this is, I'm going to take the output of selecting the laptop and the output from selecting the phone. Output, mobile device. Now, again, I need to determine where does this work component display. I'm just going to put it on the record ID. The main record that kicked it off, I should say. And it needs to be assigned to someone. I'm going to hard code my name in there. And then our exit condition. When is this step complete? Well, we're going to let it automatically determine when the screen flow has been completed. And now to create that parallel process, we're going to add another interactive step. And I'm actually going to name it 2.2 again because they work together. And this is 2.2, and this is IT approves IT equipment. And again, this is the entry condition is when a step is marked complete. And that step, remember, is not 2.2, it's 2.1. It's the first step so that we can do that parallel process. We select our flow. Let's select the right flow. HR approves. And now, again, we have those in output variables from the other flows. So I'm going to find my step of 2.1, outputs, laptop, and mobile device, put it on my record ID, and assign it to me. Of course, you probably wouldn't assign these all to the same person, but for the sake of demo and not having to log in as 3 different people, as in the worker, the HR employee, manager, and IT manager, I've assigned it all to me so that I can show it to you. Now, actually, this flow is actually active. Before I get to it in process is I do have also this stage for my post work, and it's that background step again that now goes back to that original record and unchecks the active orchestration checkbox so that the Lightning component no longer displays on the page layout. So let's go take a look at this in action. If I create a new hire record, and I'm going to put in John here, hit save. You can see on the right-hand side, we now have our work guide shows up. And John is going to get an email. Right now, Orchestrator uses just email notifications and sends an email with a link to the record to say, you have work to do, go click this and fill out the work. So John can fill out his preferred first name. Maybe it's Johnny, selects his birth date. Birth date doesn't matter here. It's just for the purposes of the demo. And then once no work is complete, he can click done. And this is what his page looks like because we continue to be in this active orchestration. So as long as we're in an active orchestration, even if there's no work to be done, the component displays on the screen. So now the HR manager should have gotten a notification, and I'll refresh the page here pretending to be the HR manager. And you can see that now I've gotten this approval. And I just have to look at the first name and birth date and go, yeah, that looks about right. Let's go ahead and approve it. We'll finish it and refresh the page again. And now Johnny is going to get a notification that he needs to select his IT equipment. So we'll go ahead and do that. And refresh the page one more time. And now it's like we're the HR manager to approve that. Now, if you remember, I said that you also have the ability to see where we are in this orchestration. And that's what's going on up here. So today, this is the only way that I know of that you can actually find an active orchestration instance or any or even a completed orchestration, is that right now you can see that it has a status, it's in progress, it's not completed yet, and then there's a bunch of related information for this orchestration. You can see all of the steps that it's gone through, which ones have been completed, which ones are in progress, and you can see right now we have 2 steps active because we're in a parallel process. We can see the stages themselves. We can see what's been completed. We did the pre-work, we did the stage 1, and we're in progress in stage 2. What you don't see, though, is what's coming up. And that's because there could be decisions that determine different stages based off of that decision. So this orchestration there's no way for an orchestration to know what path it's going to go down to show what hasn't been done yet, because we don't know because there could be decisions. And then we have the flow or the entire orchestration history. So let's go ahead and finish out this new hire record and have HR and IT finish the approval. I guess I didn't need to refresh my page there probably, but I did. IT is going to approve. We finish. There's no more work to be done. And if I were to refresh this page now, you'd see that we should no longer be in an active orchestration and the component disappears from the page. So if I come back to that orchestration instance and refresh this as well, we can actually see now that the status has been updated to completed, and we can see all of the steps it's gone through, all of the stages it's gone through, and the orchestration history. And really what's interesting, if you go to the view all of the orchestration history, is that you can see all of the details about when a step and when every step and every stage was started, who it was assigned to and acted on it, and the duration that it took for it to be completed. So we went through things pretty quickly, but it's all here, which gives us the ability in the future to do measurements. So right now, unfortunately, in beta Orchestrator, you can see all of this stuff is objects. It's objects and data that they're not available in the report builders. But I'm told that that is coming soon, and hopefully by GA we will be able to build reports and dashboards off of orchestrations. So pretty excited about that and the ability to see how long it takes for work processes to be done. So with that, that's the demo part of it. And my 5 tips for you when you start getting started with Orchestrator is, first, design your processes and flowcharts first. These are very, if you're using Orchestrator, it's probably a very complex process, and it's going to be easier to use something like Lucidchart to start building or planning how your orchestration is going to work. I showed the work to be done all on the same record page, but it can actually be displayed on any record page. If you wanted to split up where the work is being done from that new hire record to maybe the contact record, you could do that. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. So you can display it on any record page. Right now, I suggest you use a pre and post stage for setting component visibility. That's the only way that I've figured out how to do that right now. The other piece that I'm trying to figure out is, how do I only show it to the person it's assigned to? I haven't figured that out. So if someone's got some tips or thoughts on it, I'm all for giving it a try. I really haven't put my mind to it yet, but I know that there's some thoughts there. One of the other things I really want to do, just as for the future, is figure out how I can send a Slack notification to the person that is assigned to the work step, because I don't like email as notifications. So naming convention is critical as well. It's going to be really important to keep track of all of the different flows that can be part of your steps, as well as the inputs and outputs from one step to the next step, from one stage to the next stage. And finally, the only thing I can suggest as well is use a list view to keep orchestrations and your steps together. Come up with some kind of naming so that it automatically creates that list for you, kind of like a folder for keeping all of that stuff together. So that's my tips for Orchestrator. If you haven't started yet, you can join the Slack channel, Selling Flow Orchestrator. And there's a lot of tutorial vids that have started to come out from Alex on unofficialsf.com. So that's my time. I'm happy to take any questions here with the remaining 4 or 5 minutes.